So shalom aleichem. As long as you understand everything, I heard that. I'm making a deal with somebody in the class, you know, that they won't ask any questions during the typing, and said as long as they understand everything. So I'll try to make everything understandable. The last time we were together, we had been working in this particular Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, the chapters of the Fathers, chapter 2 and verse 1, where it says, calculate the loss due to a mitzvah against its reward, and the reward of a sin against its cost. We've covered this, but let's read the whole thing. Consider three things, and you will not come into the grip of sin. Know what is above you. A watchful eye, an attentive ear, and all your deeds are recorded in a book. And this is what we were working on. And when we were together the last time, I believe we mentioned, you may have to help me because I can't completely remember it. Did we talk about Rabbi Chaim of Volozhin's interpretation of that text where he says it's coming from you, mimcha? I think we did, didn't we? I think we did. I don't want to re-plow that row if we've already done it. I believe we did. Okay. So let's just pick back up. This is in the commentary of the Maharal of Prague, a commentary that was put together by Rabbi Tuvia Basser for us in this book, and page 79. Let's start up there where he says, know what is above you, a watchful eye, an attentive ear, and all your deeds are recorded in a book. And he says there are three fundamentals of Jewish belief. God knows our actions. He is concerned about them because this is what the Hebrew behind all of this implies, okay? He knows what we're doing. That's the watchful eye. He is concerned about them. That's the ear that hears, all right, and understands. And he rewards and he punishes, meaning all your deeds are recorded in a book. He says awareness of these principles, that is what actually can keep us away from transgression if we just don't forget that. Now, the next part of this commentary I think is actually very important. It's kind of like the same idea that Rebbe Chaim of Volozhin was telling us in his Sefer Nefesh HaChaim about how everything is coming actually from us, okay? He begins, he says, actions are never forgotten. Oftentimes words also, okay? Yeah. But that's an action. And words are also actions. Usually we think of actions as just something we physically do, but words also are putting your thoughts into action. So they're never forgotten, and they leave a mark on a person. They leave it on his environment and on other people. He just said right there, the Maharal did of Prague, he just said right there something that we studied very, very much when we were looking in the Way of God in Derek Hashem. And we talked about, I can't remember if we talked about it on the tape or not, about how literally, especially the things we think, say, and do, either purify the world or they pollute the world, meaning the entire environment, and on other people. He says this is actually a metaphor of a book. The act of writing the book leaves a lasting impression, and each letter joins with the others to tell an entire story. So too, our deeds, our thoughts, speech, and action create an indelible history that accumulates and builds an overall impression. He said the book in this metaphor is not written by Hashem. It is written by each one of us. So where his idea is in this metaphor, and this is the same idea that Rabbi Chaim of Volozhin was saying, where it all comes from you, everything that's above you is coming from you. And here where it says all your deeds are recorded in the book, usually the idea we have is each one of us has a recording angel who is writing down everything, okay? But the Maharal is seeing it as if we are the ones who are writing the book. We are the ones who are recording everything. He says it's not written by God, it's written by each one of us, and each of our actions adds another brush stroke to our self-portrait. We get a real portrait of who we really are in that book. Furthermore, he says, our actions also leave their mark on the world itself, contributing to its overall character. And again, that's the same idea of the Ramchal on that we either add to the side of holiness or we add to the side of uncleanness. our purification, our pollution, whichever way we want to say it. He says we can make the world a kind place and worthy of its continued existence. And now we know how to do that. Actually, that's by studying and doing Torah. Amen. That's how to make the world a kind place and worthy of its continued existence. Because as we've learned in other studies, this is why Hashem destroyed 974 worlds. Because the inhabitants of those worlds refused the Torah. Okay. Or we can make the world a place of injustice and evil. Each individual is judged for the impact of his deeds on the character of the world. The phrase, "and all your deeds are recorded in a book," refers actually to this cumulative image of the world. Moshe Rabbeinu also used this metaphor when he said, and this is in Shmuel 32:32, where he says he's interceding for Israel after the golden calf, and if Hashem will forgive them and take them back, and if not, he says, "Erase me, please, from your book which you have written." He was saying, in effect, negate, make a negative out of the impact of my life upon the whole character of the world. How sorry we would all be. That would have been, he is the, you understand what he's saying? Yeah. Yeah, where he says, "If not, erase me please from your book which you have written." Moshe Rabbeinu knows that he's not going to go out of, his soul is not going to go out of existence. It comes from Hashem. That's the same thing as saying Hashem goes out of existence. That's not what it that's not what it means at all. In our small ways, because we are thinking only of things in this physical world and we don't let Hashem be as big as he actually is, we think it's something entirely different. The Maharal is telling us, the great Rabbi Judenlo of Prague is telling us, what he's saying is actually make a negative out of the impact that my life has had upon the character of the entire world. We would be much sorrier, and the world would have been a much sorrier place, and wouldn't have continued to exist, by the way. That's the idea. Likewise, the rabbis used this same kind of metaphor when they said, and then now he's quoting from the Talmud, Rosh Hashanah 16b, that 3 books are opened on Rosh Hashanah. One of entirely wicked people, one of entirely righteous people, tzaddikim, and one of benonim, in-between people, intermediate people, okay? The righteous, he says, impart a different character to the world than do the wicked. Benonim, intermediate people, confer still a different character on the world. And these 3 images of the world, he says, are the books that are open. Those 3 different images are the books that are open on Rosh Hashanah. And this is the book, he says, in which the Mishnah says all your deeds are recorded. Now, let me add something from Rabbi Yehuda Lev Ashlag, Yehuda Ashlag, the Baal HaSulam. He explains another passage in the Talmud that talks about the wicked Benonim, okay, intermediate people, wicked people, intermediate people, and tzaddikim, the righteous. And that passage in the Talmud talks about the quality of a wicked person, the quality of an in-between person, and the quality of a tzaddik. And Rabbi Ashlag makes the point to show and really explains, and it does it so beautiful, that this is not talking about 3 different people. This is talking about one person. That every person on the planet has the quality, except for a tzaddik gamul, except for a completed tzaddik, all right? Every other person has the quality of a rasha, of a wicked person. They have the quality of an intermediate person and the potential. And they have the quality and the potential also of a tzaddik. That is actually the same kind of thing that's going on here where it talks about 3 books. Every one of us has these 3 books. Okay? That's the idea. And here where he is saying these 3 images of the world, those are the books that are opened on Rosh Hashanah, and this is the book, singular, in which this Mishnah says all your deeds are recorded. Do we understand what he's trying to say? In other words, sometimes when we read that passage about these 3 books that are opened on Rosh Hashanah, and we're hoping, oh wow, I hope I'm not found written in the book of wicked people. I hope I'm at least found written in the book of intermediate people. The deal is those 3 books are actually records of the quality of a wicked person that's in me, the quality of a Benoni, and the quality of a Tzaddik. So where most people are in all 3 books, okay, simultaneously. That's the idea. It's a little bit different way of thinking and looking at it.
In other words, our book has 3 chapters.
See, the book has 3 chapters, that's true, okay. Or we could say 3 different books because, you know, if a person is successful to move to the place of really being a tzaddik and not moving back all the time, all those other things are actually willful sins are converted, transformed into accidental sins. Accidental sins are transformed into merits. So there is a way to adjust, to absolutely adjust the story and absolutely adjust these books. Okay? All right, let's go on. Not to confuse you, and I probably just did, but it will come, the more we study certain other things, it will come together. But it's a good idea that we all know and that we all realize that we have those qualities or those potentials. Consider three things. Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi says that keeping these 3 things in mind prevents us from coming within the hold, within the grasp of sin. He says, how can this advice possibly be of use? Because presumably anyone who is not watchful for the chance to do mitzvot, commandments, and avoid sin will also not be careful to keep these 3 things constantly in mind. So they're asking, the Maharal is asking the question, why did he tell us these things? Why didn't he tell us, keep your nose to the grindstone? Just do the mitzvot. If you're busy doing the mitzvot, there's no possibility that you'll ever come into sin. So why, and a person who's not willing to do that, how can they possibly be careful enough to keep those 3 things that he says always in their head? The answer, he says, is that it is easier to follow this advice than it is to keep the mitzvot. It's much easier for us to just follow this advice. He's not telling you not to keep the mitzvot, but it's easier to do this than it is to keep the mitzvot. There is a natural drive to transgress, which we call the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. Let's define exactly what that is. It's the will to receive for yourself alone. And it makes the burden, he says, of a positive mitzvah loom large. How can I do that? It's going to cost me. It's going to take time. Oh man, look at what I have to put out to do it. The Yetzer Hara makes that big. Why? Because the mitzvot, if we're doing them correctly, they're not feeding that will to receive for yourself alone. It makes the burden of a positive mitzvah loom large, and it magnifies the desire to transgress a negative commandment, something that Hashem says you shouldn't be doing. Don't do this, don't do that. Why? Because it's damaging to you. It's not in your best interest. And damage will come to it, and you'll add to the side of pollution in all the worlds. So, but then the Yetzer Hara comes, says, makes your desire to transgress that commandment even more. Why? Because all the negative commandments also have to do with that will to receive for yourself alone. Okay. Because it is not a mitzvah, he says, it's not a commandment to us to remember the 3 things of this Mishnah. Look at the logic, this unbelievable logic. It's not a commandment that comes stated directly in the Torah, that we should remember these 3 things, okay? So there is no compelling desire to forget them. The Yetzer Hara leaves you alone. And with these things firmly in mind, the desire to transgress becomes minimal. For this reason, the Mishnah states that one will not come within the grasp of sin, within the hold of it, over and over and over and over again, where it's really got a hold of you, rather than saying that one will not sin. So because it's not a commandment, I'm not so sure that the Yetzer Hara leaves you completely alone, but the Yetzer Hara is completely and totally linked mainly to getting us to not do the positive commandments and to go against and transgress the negative ones. And because of its link with commandments, this is advice. And so it doesn't come at you quite so hard if you just remember these three things, because it's not a commandment. That's unbelievable logic that's being used. Yeah. The words, consider three things, he says, teach us an important lesson about the purpose behind the unique human form. And in all this we're reading, number one, Rabbi Tuvia Basar is a real genius, because he comes in and he always tells us when it's his thoughts and not the Maharal's. But the Maharal himself was just an unbelievable rabbi. He really was something unbelievable. You know, as some of his story, you know, the Maharal of Prague. Wonderful legends are told about him that he created a golem, you know, to protect the Jewish community. We do know that on two occasions, Prague was, in those days, was in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the emperor of it, I believe Franz Joseph, actually came to the Maharal to consult with him 2 different times, just to get his wisdom. And for the emperor of the Austro-Hungarian Empire to go to a Jewish rabbi to consult is an unbelievable thing. Anyway, so that just tells you something of the Maharal's status. He was really something. Let him go on. He says, they teach us an important lesson about the purpose behind the unique human form. Because God's presence is not visible in this world, Hashem is concealed. And this is the idea of the worlds. We have to remember, as we come down from the Ein Sof, Adam Kadmon, we don't talk about. But Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, Asiyah. Next to nearness, emanation, then creation, then formation, then doing, making, action. In every one of those worlds, every one of those universes, Hashem becomes more hidden. All right? He's harder to perceive. He's harder to see, which is why we have free will and free choice in this world of making, because he's hidden. We don't perceive him and we don't see him. And this is, you know, this is really the whole purpose of all of our study, is to make our own tikkun, to make a tikkun of our souls, our will to receive for ourselves alone, so that we can become attached to him, so that we can begin to actually see him in this world in which he is so hidden, and to perceive him in it. Because he's here in this world just as much as he is in the world of Atzilut. But because of all the shells and and everything else, his presence is hidden. So because of that, the Maharal says, it's easy for people to come to sin. It's very easy, because we don't think he's around. Seriously. We can get, that is the impression that we begin to get. And that especially the Yetzer Hara is going to tell you that. What's the big deal? He ain't here. He's not, you know, he's a very busy person. You think he has time to fool with you? Seriously, you know. And so the Maharal says that Hashem compensated for this physical blind spot with the spiritual ability to perceive and fear God. He says our erect human posture, he's talking about the unique form of a human being. Why do we walk around on 2 legs erect instead of on all 4s? Our erect human posture, he says, it actually permits us to easily gaze at the heavens. And there, he says, we observe God's presence. How do we do that? Through the sun, the rain, and all the other forces of nature that he directs. And because of that, and because we know that he is in each one of those things, that all those powers come from him and he is the master of every one of them, he says, because of that, he says, we are less inclined to sin. The use of the Hebrew word histakel. Histakel is a very interesting word. It's a word we can use for look, but it's more often used for stare. He says, the use of the Hebrew word histakel for consider three things, he says, actually translates much more literally as stare at three things, and you will not come into the grip of sin. It suggests, he says, that we should use our upright physical stature to do what? To stare at Hashem, to focus on God above, and with these things in mind, and then we will not come within the grasp of sin. I love the way he breaks all these down, because there's so much more. You know, we can read it, we can read one of the Mishnayot, but we can read it, and at first glance we say, wow, that sounds pretty cool. That's good advice. But if we don't actually take the time to really break it down, and I promise you, if we did this again next week, the same Mishnah, we'll find other things that we didn't find this time. But if we don't begin to break it down, we don't see the real beauty of the minds of these unbelievable sages of Chazal, as we've already seen so far in this study. It's really, it always blows my mind. It just absolutely does, that there is so much depth in the oral Torah, unbelievably so. All right, we have come to Mishnah number 2 of chapter 2 of Pirkei Avot. All right, let's read the Mishnah. We may not get any farther than that, just to read this Mishnah. All right, it's a little bit longer than some of them, but we're going to find more and more that are longer and longer the farther we go. Rabban Gamliel, the son of Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, all right, says, Torah study is good, together with derech eretz, manners. Proper, they translate proper social conduct. For the exertion of both of them makes sin forgotten. All Torah study, he says, that is not joined also with work will cease in the end. And it actually leads to sin. Unbelievable. Torah study that's not also joined with work. We'll understand this soon. All who exert themselves for the community should exert themselves for the sake of heaven, meaning in order to please Hashem. For then the merit of their fathers aids them, and their righteousness endures forever. Nevertheless, as for you, I, meaning God, will bestow upon you as great a reward as if you had accomplished it on your own. We have a whole lot to study here, all right? There's a whole lot to study. That, by the way, is the basis also of the idea. For instance, you know, when we were studying the Ramchal, and he's pointing out to us different things about the intention you should have in your head and in your spirit when you say the Shema. One of them, of course, is taking upon you the yoke of the kingdom of heaven. Another is being that you're willing to literally die for Hashem. All right? And even though he may never require you to literally give up your life in his service, if you're willing to do it, that still, he rewards you as if you did. It still counts the same as if you actually did. It's interesting. Okay. Let's get a little introduction from the Maharal on this Mishnah, and then when we're together again, we may have to back up and pick it up again so we don't forget it. He says, Rabbi Gamliel's advice appropriately follows that of his father, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, who's usually referred to just as Rabbi, in the previous Mishnah. Rabbi's words, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, encompassed good character attributes and the performance of the mitzvot which bring a person to the world to come. He approached the subject in general terms, and his son now gives very specific advice regarding proper social conduct, derek eretz, manners, in this world, which is actually preparatory to the next world. We forget that too. Olam hazeh, this world is a preparation period for Olam haba, for the world to come. Although he says the value of proper social conduct the value of it is less than that of the mitzvot, it actually precedes the mitzvot in this way. One must first conduct himself properly in society before acquiring the Torah. Hence, this Mishnah establishes the practical foundation for the principles that are expressed in the first Mishnah. That is actually based on where he says one must first conduct himself properly in society before acquiring Torah, meaning a good behaved citizen, having manners, all right, social manners, is based on a midrash, Vayikra Rabbah, part 9 of it, where it states that proper social conduct, meaning derek eretz, the way of the land is literally what that means, preceded the Torah by 26 generations. Can we catch what he's saying? The Torah came on Mount Sinai, was delivered to us on Mount Sinai. What about the 26 generations from Adam to Moshe Rabbeinu, from Adam to him? What did they have? Derek Eretz. They had also Torah, but it wasn't the written Torah in the garments of this world. But they knew Derek Eretz. They knew manners. They knew the proper social conduct. So it came before the Torah, and that's why it's so important. I just got hung in my throat. Give me a second and I'll say Shalom Uvaka and we'll just be finished. That happened to me last night on Noahide Nations. I was doing so well, and about two or 3 minutes away from the end of it, I sucked the cough drop that I was sucking on down my throat. And then I got to coughing and I couldn't stop. It was so embarrassing. But so it's something else you have to edit, Jason. That's all. That's all. When you finally get that, it's like lesson 33. We're not there yet. Okay. Anyway, so the next time we're together, we'll pick this back up, this idea, and begin to look at it on what exactly Rabban Gamliel, the son of Rabbi Yehuna Hanasi, is trying to tell us. Okay. It'll be enjoyable. All Pirkei Avot, I promise you, the further we move into it, the more fascinating it becomes and the more really good advice and knowledge that it gives to us. So, Toda Rabbah, thank you so much for studying with me for just a few minutes. And Shalom Uvracha. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.